71% of high school dropouts are fatherless. 85% of youth in prison grew up without a dad. Men raised without fathers are twice as likely to end up in jail by 30. These aren't just statistics, they're a generation of men walking around with a wound they were never taught to heal. Today, we're going deep on why fatherless boys struggle as men.
The worst parent combo you can get is a dad who's not involved and a mom who's overly involved. And that's because it creates this weird form of like narcissism that you always have to be struggling with. Because you can think like dad essentially through his actions is saying, you're not very valuable. You don't have high worth. That's why I didn't stick around. And then mom is kind of elevating you to this place of specialness, this place of like, you're my whole world. And it almost feels like it sets this impossible bar, like this high standard that you need to achieve. So on one hand, you're low worth and don't matter. On the other hand, you matter so much. And that's so overwhelming for a kid. And that oscillation back and forth can turn into something like you're really confident on the outside, like you kind of come across a little maybe overconfident, maybe a little arrogant or grandiose, but then on the inside you have this paralyzing insecurity and imposter syndrome, like you just never feel good enough. And it's like, okay, well, which one is it? And the thing is, these are two different wounds. People think that that's just like, that's my insecurity or that's my ego. That's not true. It's two separate wounds that need to be healed separately. One wound is a mother who used her kid to fix her pain. And the other is a dad who went off to fix his pain and left behind his kid.
2.9 million views because he described a wound that millions of men carry in silence. An absent father tells you you're not worth staying for. An overbearing mother tells you you're her everything. And you grow up trapped between worthlessness and impossible expectations.
Could you handle not having your mother not in your life and then your father leaving you? Could you imagine what your life could be like? Could you imagine how hard it is for you to avoid the streets? Can you imagine how hard it is to grow up not knowing what's right and what's wrong? Can you imagine what it's like walking across the stage and your parents is not there? Can you imagine that? Can you just imagine not being wanted, period? And you're just stranded all by yourself and you're trying to figure out life, but you gotta learn the hard way.
The pain in that man's voice tells you everything. Growing up without a father doesn't just leave a gap. It leaves a blueprint that's missing. You don't know how to be a man because no one showed you. And the world expects you to figure it out alone.
Dear absent fathers, never assume that the mother taught the child to hate you. A child can notice a father who doesn't want to be involved in his child's life. Stop this nonsense of always thinking that mothers poison their kids against you. Your absence is the biggest poison.
600,000 views on a video about a pain that most men never talk about. Because society doesn't give fatherless men space to grieve. You're just supposed to be strong. But strength built on an unhealed wound is just survival. And survival is not the same as living.
Fatherhood is the main reason why kids turn out the way they do. Kids who grow up without fathers, they have worse lives. Like They end up in trouble. Statistically, but just common sense.
Yeah.
If you don't have a dad, you're going to have a tough time. And not having a dad could be like literally your dad's just not around, period. Yeah. Or your dad is there, but he's not. You know, I really want the men to understand you're not doing your kids any favors by not being there.
Every fatherless man has to make a choice. Repeat the cycle or break it. And breaking it means doing the hardest thing a man can do. Looking at the wound, admitting it hurt, and deciding that your children will never feel what you felt. So we know the wound is real. But what does it actually do to a man long term? Let's look at how the father wound shows up in your relationships, your work, and your identity.
How do you heal the father wound?
Jeez, that's a deep wound to heal. It happens through forgiveness. It happens through forgiveness first within yourself. Forgiving the little boy or the little girl within yourself that expected your father to be a certain way with you, even when you didn't understand that he didn't know how to be that way with you. It next happens by understanding. Understanding that your father was exactly with you the same way that his father or his mother was with him. The third thing that happens is it's accepting your father for who he is and not for who you wish he could be. And when you get all of those three in order, what starts to happen is your heart starts to open. You learn to forgive yourself, you learn to trust yourself, and you learn to love yourself. And when you're finally able to love yourself, regardless of what you've done and who you've been and the mistakes you've made, then you get to open your eyes and through compassion in your heart, see your father for the little boy that he was before somebody wounded him. And that's when you remember. You remember that your father is just like you. You remember that your father at one point in time in his life was born and he was innocent. And he didn't know pain and he didn't know hatred and he didn't know how to mistreat anyone. And that's when you have compassion for him. Because you realize that the pain he caused you is very simply a reflection of the pain that was once caused to him.
The father wound doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you into every relationship, every job, every decision. Fatherless men often overwork because they're trying to prove they're enough. They avoid vulnerability because nobody taught them it was safe. Healing starts with seeing the pattern.
45% of men 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person?
Never asked a woman out in person. And what they're up against, think about it, our economy literally rests on 10 companies now, often referred to as the Magnificent 10. And they do several things, but quite frankly, they're in the business of enragement, polarization, and then sequestering young people from all other activities.
And that's only getting worse given where AI is going. I mean, with like, agents and chatbots who are, sexually clad anime type figures chatting with young men.
Well, it starts pretty innocent. When you use AI, have you noticed the prompts that are almost irresistible at the end? Let me put this in a series of tweets. Right. Before you know it, you're 3 hours deep. But effectively, these companies have attached the entire economy and literally trillions of dollars to trying to get people to, or trying to convince young people, specifically young men who are more susceptible, because quite frankly, their prefrontal cortices isn't as developed, to try and convince them they can have a reasonable fact.
Scott Galloway is right. Young men are in crisis, and nobody is building the systems to help them. When 45% of men have never asked a woman out in person, that's not a dating problem. That's a confidence crisis rooted in a generation that grew up without men to model confidence for them.
What is the best and worst thing about being Jordan Peterson?
The worst? I'm a bit much.
And the best?
You might say. So,
what's the best thing?
I'm sort of running in all directions very rapidly, and so that can be a bit much. It's hard on people around me. I'm a bit much, man.
And what's the best thing about you?
The best thing about being me?
Yeah.
It's overwhelming, really. Well, the deep appreciation that people have for what I've been doing. It's stunning. It's soul destroying, but it's amazing.
Is it not soul enhancing? I mean, I feel it when I do interviews with you, the reaction I get from people, just how much you mean to them. I mean, I can imagine it's soul.
Yeah, well, that's a bit much.
Peterson cries because he feels the weight of speaking to millions of men who have no one else to listen to them. That's the father wound in action. Men searching for guidance from strangers on the internet because their own fathers weren't there.
My son, before you give up, listen to me. When life feels like everything is slipping away, breathe. Even trees lose all their leaves, yet they never bow. They trust the season that is coming. My son, you must trust your own season too. When you stand for something, root yourself like a mighty tree. And if life knocks you down, fall like a seed ready to rise, ready to grow stronger. Stand up again. Fight again. There is more strength in you than you realize. Your pain is not here to finish you. It is here to shape you, stretch you, prepare you. Life will shake you, my son, but it will not break you. Stay standing. Hold your ground. Your season of growth is coming closer than you think. If this touched you, type "I will rise again" in the comments.
Trust your season. Those words hit different when you grew up without a father, because fatherless men don't trust seasons. They expect the worst because the worst already happened. Learning to trust the process is the beginning of healing.
Stop wasting time on women. Don't chase women. Instead, focus on your growth, values, and cultivating kindness. The right person will find their way to you at the perfect moment, without the need for chasing.
I'd rather stay inside and play video games. I try to date online, but women think I'm lame. I work a 9 to 5, but not enough to save. They told me I should cry, but no one sees my motherfucking pain.
That spoken word captured everything. The loneliness, the invisible pain, the quiet desperation of a man who was never taught how to ask for help. If that resonated with you, you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just carrying something that was never yours to carry. If you grew up without a father, hear this. The wound is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. Find a mentor, get honest about the pain, and decide right now that the cycle ends with you. You can be the father you never had. You can be the man nobody taught you to be. But it starts with facing what happened and choosing a different path. Subscribe if you're choosing to break the cycle.